My name's Michelle Rosato, and I work at the Connecticut State Department of Education in the Performance Office. I mainly work on the Connecticut SAT School Day, but you know, like everyone, I wear many hats. But again, I want to thank you all for joining us for this overview of the suite of assessments. It's the first in a series of our professional developments that we'll be holding to get you ready to administer the 2026, I can't even believe that, Connecticut SAT School Day. It's our 10th anniversary test because we started in 2016. So again, thanks all for joining us. This is being recorded and it will be posted to the Connecticut's SAT School Day webpage for those of you that have colleagues that couldn't attend. We will definitely post that up on our website. So before I kick it off to James and have him introduce his team, I know that Deirdre is on here, Ducharme from the State Department of Ed, my colleague, and I just wanted her to introduce herself.
Thanks, Michelle. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Deirdre. I work in the performance office on statewide assessments, and I specifically support students with accommodations and accessibility needs on the Connecticut SAT School Day. So it's great to start the school year off with you, and please reach out with any questions you have along the way.
Thanks, Dee. And I know that Abe Christ, who's the bureau chief in the performance office, was not able to join us today, but he does send his regards. And also, as I said, thanks to all of you for the work that you're doing to get ready for the assessment in March of 26. All right, I'd like to turn it over to James Wilson, our partner at the College Board on the assessment. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Deirdre. Yes, James Wilson, many of you know me, and if you don't know me, it's probably because you're just so good at doing everything so well, you haven't had to ask me any questions, so it's all good. But I've been with Connecticut working on the SAT School Day, coming up on 3 years now, and joining me in that is Dominique. Do you want to come on and say hello real quick?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Dominique Bernard. I assist James with Connecticut, and it's going to be my second year with you all. So very happy to be here and excited to work with you again.
And with more seniority than either of us, the one person I think most people know for all of her hard work on behalf of your students with accommodations, Keisha Smith. Keisha, do you want to come on and say hello?
Good afternoon, everyone. Keisha Smith, Senior Director for Services for Students with Disabilities. I work closely to support the Connecticut team on the College Board side and on the Connecticut DOE side as well.
And last but not least, she's actually been with College Board for a very long time, and she's right there with you in New England, but coming over new to support the statewide efforts with the SAT suite. So if we come up with any PSAT questions, you might find me tag teaming her during this presentation. Jenny, do you want to say hi?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everybody. You've probably started getting emails from me, Jenny Cacavalli, the College Board, State and District Partnerships. I've been with the College Board going on 13 years, but I've been primarily supporting the state of Massachusetts. So now I'm just expanding and we'll be taking on work in Connecticut as well. So you'll probably start getting emails from me. I'm so excited to work with you. I think we have 2 other people from our state and district partnership team that are here today, Bob Walcott, Jeff Roth. So we're the 3 people from College Board that support your work, not just around the SAT suite, but all things College Board, including AP.
I've heard of that. AP, I have heard of that. We're focused on SAT suite today, but certainly one of the things that if there's time allows, we'll get into is leveraging the SAT for instruction. And a big part of that is the AP. So again, thanks for joining us, Jenny. And certainly if AP questions come up in tandem with how understanding scores and things like that from the SAT suite, please, we'll tag team to answer those. But let's go into today's agenda. So this is meant as a broad overview, largely for district test coordinators, though everyone's welcome to attend. And certainly if you're new to administering anything in the SAT suite, we're really glad to have you here today. But it's largely a high-level overview and a chance for open Q&A. So we won't spend long on the presentation part at all. So first, we're going to go through the training schedule for the spring SAT school day. So you can see what's coming down the pike. We're going to be starting in November and then running through leading up to the testing window, which is opens on March 2nd. So you can see everything that's coming down the line for training. Take a quick look at what is going to be new for the SAT this spring. So enhancements that we've made regarding Test Day Toolkit, Blue Book, and accommodations. No major changes in functionality, nothing to be worried about. It's actually just listening to what we heard from educators, both at the district and the school level, of things that we could do to help improve students' experience and administrators' experience. We took that into consideration and made some of those changes. Just want to make you aware of them. And then we're going to get into the Q&A, and it's completely open. Anything you want to ask about the SAT suite of assessments. If we start to hear crickets, then we'll move into some additional slides, and you can see I have them all lined up here. I'm not in presenter mode, so I can easily pop to any image that might help answer a question that you have. But we could get into how to leverage the SAT suite for instruction, not just as a college entrance exam. So with that, I'm going to move on. Our training schedule for the spring 2026 SAT school day. Announcements will be sent out about these after we collect all the coordinator level assignments from schools, which we're going to be doing just in a couple weeks here. And so you're all accustomed to Michelle's emails throughout the course of the year. And she often puts all of these in a table format for you. But just as a heads up before formal announcements, to all school coordinator level staff, we're going to kick things off in November on the 12th with a webinar for what I like to say is SAT coordinators. And I emphasize that plural because it is for test, tech, and SSD coordinators together. This is not a nuts and bolts what to click on in every single platform, but rather it is an overview of all the tasks and roles that each of these coordinators need to do and need to be aware that their colleagues are doing so that they can work well together as a team. So that test coordinators don't need to feel like, hey, I'm going at this alone, but there's actually a team that they're managing and that is supporting them and what each of their roles are and how they interact. It's really good, especially if somebody's going to be new to the role. So if you're district test coordinator, like, oh, at this school, I've got somebody doing it this year that's never done it before. This is a really good session to make sure that they come to. From there, then we get into all the deep dives. So the first one will be the SSD coordinator webinar, for which Keisha, who you met earlier, will be key. And that all these deep dives, they do get into what platform am I going into? How do I get access to it? What do I click on? How do I do each specific task? Screenshot, highly visual, highly interactive. We start off with the SSD coordinator deep dive first because they are the ones with the first deadline. So accommodation request deadline is January 12th. So we want to get all that information out to them so that SSD coordinators can review past approved accommodations, see if anything needs revision or addition, as well as input new ones ahead of that January 12th deadline. Now, if you're thinking, wow, that's so early, if you're new to this game, deadline's a little bit of a misnomer. It's not a drop dead. What it means is if you have a student that you know is enrolled in your school, and you know what their IEP is and their accommodations are, then you really want to have them all correct in SSD Online by January 12th. That way, if you have a new student come into your school after that deadline, or you have a new IP after that deadline, or God forbid, there's some sort of accident for a student or a group of students, and you have to request temporary accommodations after that deadline, you're not dealing with it while you're handling all these things that could have been taken care of before January 12th. And also, our queue for processing is clear to take care of those. Especially if they're ones that maybe are a little more complicated and required some documentation and take longer to process. So since coordinators have that January 12th deadline, we do their deep dive first. January 20th, our learning management system training becomes available. So that's online, on demand, one click straight from your College Board professional account dashboard. And that's specific to each particular role and expands the trainings to proctors and monitors. January 29th, we'll do our tech coordinator webinar. Those of you who have seen that in the past or the recordings of them, it's an hour-long session, but only the first 15 to 20 minutes are presentation. After that, it's open Q&A for tech person to talk to tech person. So our tech team is on there to answer their questions, and they can get as technical and jargony as they like. Everybody's going to understand and be able to handle that. February 3rd, we're all in person at Hartford for morning and afternoon sessions for test coordinators. So that's the test coordinator deep dive. That's because the state data management system and the test day toolkit will become accessible that week. So we'll be out there to work hand in hand with them on all the details, all the nitty gritty, and we'll have a virtual session the day after. And then finally rounding out, you know what? So people don't keep hearing my voice, Jenny, do you want to talk about the K-12 data portal webinars at the end of the year?
Sure. So Spring College Board K-12 data portal webinar. So this is really, you're getting your scores back. We want to make sure that you know how to access everything in the portal. We can take you through how to use the data to best inform instruction. Please include anybody from your high school teams that's going to be looking at this data. So again, it's open to everybody, but we're going to take you through the portal. That's where all the scores are, and let you know how you can best use this to increase your college and career readiness goals.
Thanks.
And we really quickly, we are working on some more webinars around AI, because we've heard from you. So more to come, but we're planning on rolling out some other exciting webinars this spring. So it won't be the same old. The K-12 data portal will be the same, but you've probably, if you attended, nothing's changed, but we are working on some new webinars as well to support you.
Thanks, Jenny. So with that, we're going to turn to what is going to be new for this school year. So first off, in terms of you giving us your coordinator level staff data. So who's going to be the school, all those positions we're training for, right? The school test coordinator, tech coordinator, SSD coordinator, and their backups. If you recall, before it was always a Smartsheet survey that got emailed out to you. You will still get outreach from Michelle about this in about a week. And then you'll get a subsequent distribution specific to each school and each district the week thereafter about our new process. It is essentially just answering the same questions, but it's going to be in SSOR. The advantage to that will be once you have that access and you do it for us, this will enable you to self-serve going forward. So if you have a change in personnel staff, you'll be able to log in and make those changes. And similarly, district level staff and state level staff like Michelle and Deirdre and Abe, they could go into that system 24/7, 365 and see, oh, what are the current test coordinators at all of these schools. So less Excel spreadsheets, flying around more real-time data for everyone. Some enhancements to Test Day Toolkit. You will now be able to filter for accommodations. And I know that was a big request specifically in Connecticut. So when you go to your student roster, you can now pop up a filter for accommodations and you can say, I want to see everybody who has text to speech, or I want to see everybody who has a combination of text to speech and extended time versus those that have text to speech and not extended time. You can run those filters. We know we've always had the classifications S1, S2, S3 in terms of seating, but this enables you to get even more granular because you know you're building the best and your staff the best. And so you can say, this is what I really need to know. This is the list I really need to have. You can filter for that and plan accordingly. Similarly, you'll have more data fields on the student rosters, both when you view them online and if you go to export those rosters to Excel. So a lot more ability to filter or sort on a very granular level. And finally, what I'm very excited about, though I have to admit, I heard it more in some other states than I did in Connecticut, but Proctor preview mode. So what does that mean? Well, you know that we talk about test coordinators adding, editing, sorting, assigning staff in Test Day Toolkit, but then not giving them access to their test administration until the day before or the day of their test, just so nobody's accidentally giving room codes or something like that. But then we hear from proctors sometimes, I really wish I could play around in Test Day Toolkit. I wish I could remind myself of the functionality. I wish I could look at the scripts in advance. I know they're in the publication manuals, but I'd like to see how they appear there. I'd like to practice a little bit. This preview mode will enable proctors to go in whenever they like. So as soon as Test Day Toolkit becomes available the first week of February, they can go in, they will see it in preview mode. They can click anything, do whatever they want. They won't break anything. They won't affect anything with your administration. So we're really excited about that as a training tool. For Blue Book, we're adding a second embedded calculator. It's still Desmos, but we're going to have not just the graphing calculator, but also a scientific calculator. So that's meeting a lot of students' requests. They can toggle between the two. So they don't need to pick one at the outset and go. They can go back and forth question by question if they like. In terms of handhelds, those are still permitted. We changed on our website a little bit of how that list is provided. Instead of saying this is the very long list of what's acceptable, it's more like this is the very short list of what is not. Okay, and it's going more towards those that calculators are more web enabled and AI features, canceling those out. Other items in Blue Book, a more obvious way to expand and collapse what they see on their screen. So basically, there was always a dividing line with the text they're being asked about or problem they're being asked about on the left, and then the actual question choices on the right. It's still the same function. They can move the center line to the left or the right to expand either one, but now we just put a little grabby tool that makes that more apparent, because we heard some students saying, I wish I could make one side of my screen bigger or smaller, and we realized, well, they always could. We must not have made that obvious enough. So we're making it more obvious. We're also making it more obvious for extended time students that they can end their extended time early. So basically there's a little countdown cue next to that next button telling them how long they have to go until it's going to go live. And then once it goes live, saying, hey, you've finished standard time, you can click on this now. And if they get to the review page, if they finish the whole module ahead of time, there's more explicit call out there that they don't just have to sit and wait. Again, because some students were saying, I wish I could end my extended time early. And we're like, well, you could have. So they must have been missing those cues. So we made it more obvious. Similarly, the option eliminator that we have is now going to be default turned on. Again, we were hearing from some students saying, I wish I could cross out answer choices as I'm thinking. And it was like, well, you were always able to do that. We must not have made that obvious. So instead of having it be a function students have to turn on, it will be default turned on. They can turn it off if they want, but another improvement we made is that if they do turn it off, when they turn it back on, whatever crossouts they made will pop up again. So it will be retained. Their choices will be retained through the whole of the exam, no matter how many times they turn that option eliminator off and on. And we've added some more colors for highlights and more distinct colors, as well as the ability for students to highlight in their answer choices as well. So if they want to say, pink is the one I feel best about, blue is the one that I feel second best about, yellow I have concerns about, they can knock themselves out. Accommodations. Keisha, I don't want to take the thunder. I've been talking again for too long. Can you just, you want to say about the access request form?
Sure. Thank you, James. Yes, so we actually launched this in August. We are happy to announce that the SSD form that you have to use in order to request for access is now a web-based form. So if you utilize, for example, the link that we have provided, this will take you directly to the SSD web page, and it provides you with detailed instruction in terms of filling out the information. Also reminding you that in order to be established as an SSD coordinator, you must be established also with the College Board Professional Account. The College Board Professional Account is the tool that allows you to get into the additional College Board tools, such as for fall, SSOR, that may be something familiar with you, and then for spring, also to access SDMS, and overall for digital testing, Test A Toolkit. So again, it's very important that you are established first with the College Board Professional Account, and we guide you through this information via the SSD online web form as well. The second update is that we have recently launched the new ability to exchange certain accommodations in SSD online, and it actually gives an instant same day approval. So when I say instant, it usually takes roughly about 15 minutes in most cases for you to see that update. So for example, if you wanted to update your student from let's say text to speech, but you realize the student would actually need the screen reader accommodation, those types of switches would be available through this process. So again, that's I'm happy to announce this enhancement, and I think it will definitely make everyone's lives easier with not having to wait for it to go through a process of several days before you see that update. I mentioned screen reader, but it's important that you are aware of this change as well. We did launch this announcement at the end of July. A communication went out to active SSD coordinators and students that the screen reader accommodation is no longer automatically coupled with 50% time in one half. And so what that means is that in the past, if you had a student, let's say, participated in testing last year, but identified with the screen reader accommodation, that student by default would have been approved for 50%. So after receiving a lot of feedback from educators and some from students as well, we took a deeper dive into how we could resolve this, and understanding that while the screen reader accommodation, read aloud, is typically utilized for our students with visual impairments, we also know that not two students are not the same. And what we mean by that is, while some students may typically need to have some form of time in order to use the screen reader read aloud accommodation, which must be configured through third-party reading software such as JAWS, a lot of students quite often did not necessarily need to have the time. That time may have been historically associated with their IEP and or 504, but because it was automatically built in, this was something attached to that accommodation. So this goes away, and it's effective now. But one thing that for anyone with a large volume of students who were already approved for this, our communication also shared with educators and students and their families was that if this is a scenario where you have a student where he or she does in fact want to continue with the use of the 50% that was already on their record because of the screen reader, we have cared for that. So we did not make an auto change to those students. If no change is required, the student should continue on with that time. You do not need to take any action. The only time you would need to change that information in SSD Online through the example of the new ability exchange or removal process. If that student's IEP or 504 indicates that they do not typically receive time, you've had the conversation with the student and their family or guardian that they do not want to receive the time, that is the only point when you would need to go in to make that change. And again, that is more specific to your students who were already identified in the College Board system prior to this change launching. If you have a brand new student to your school and you're selecting the screen reader accommodation, again, that is more commonly for students with visual impairments, but we do say that you can determine at the school level whether it is a screen reader, which is the requires configuration, or text to speech. So those are, some differences. And of course, as we continue to do these webinars, specifically the more focused SSD coordinator webinar, we will go through all of these details again. But again, for your screen reader student, if they're brand new to the school, meaning that there's no previous record of this accommodation, you are determining based on that IEP or 504 whether or not the student requires screen reader and time. And if so, when in SSD Online, you will need to select both. So you will first go to the extended time category. If this is aligned to the IEP or 504, select the amount of time that is needed, and then you're going to go to the reading accommodations category and then select the screen reader. And then the final item we have here is the update to text-to-speech option. So right now, text-to-speech is identified solely in SSD Online as one accommodation. We're actually having some upcoming changes that will be launching towards the end of the year. We don't want to risk causing any confusion for schools that may still be in the process if you have students that are participating in fall October testing, but just know that there will be some updates coming that we will be sharing in the November webinars. So there will be some slight changes. I think at the level of communicating with our Connecticut schools today, it will be less of a change for your schools, but we still want to make sure we share with you any upcoming future changes that will be happening. So stay tuned for that. But just a quick reminder in terms of the text-to-speech, that does continue to be a separate accommodation, similar as I mentioned about the screen reader. It is a read aloud accommodation for students. Like the screen reader acts now, text-to-speech never included extended time for your students. But if this is something that you need for a student, by all means, when requesting, you should make sure you individually select the amount of time that would be needed. That's all for me, James.
Awesome. Thank you, Keisha. And with that, that's all from me as well. So we are on to the open any and everything from what we were talking about to anything else regarding the SAT suite. Any questions? And I see a lot have been coming through in the chat, but both my CSDE and College Board colleagues have been feverishly answering them. So Dominique, I'm going to look at you and ask, are there any open questions or things that you think need a little bit more explanation from one of us?
No open questions. A lot of them seem to be about accommodations, though.
Okay. Well, one just popped in, brand new. I think, Keisha, this one's for you. Laura asks if she should be worried that some of her kids have text-to-speech while others have screen reader.
Worried? No. I do not want you to be worried about that. What I do want you to take into consideration, Lori, is just in terms of the differences between the two and the reason why. So the first thing is that text to speech is more ideal for students that have a reading disability or a print disability. For the purpose of digital testing, it allows the student on test day to select the sentence or the paragraph that they wish to have read aloud to them, right? These are students that, yes, they are identified again with a reading disability, but they're able to follow along versus the screen reader technology. While it is a read aloud, but it is more ideal for your visually impaired student because it's going to read all of the information from page to page. These are our students who, whether they have low vision or are identified as legally blind, fully blind, and are accustomed to assistive technology, they're able to follow along and it will read every item to them on the screen. So it's a matter of having the conversations with the students and their families and guardians to determine if screen reader is appropriate for those students. I do not want you to worry about it, but it is important because how the student's able to access the tests on test day, it would be different. So if you have a student that's identified for text to speech, when in fact they need to have all of the text read to them, and they're utilizing a third-party screen reader, that's where the difference is. So you just want to make sure that your students are prepared. And the way to do that also, Lori, is to also have your students start practicing as early as possible. And if it is determined that text-to-speech is not appropriate, but they actually need the screen reader, then you have to go in and do that swap in SSD online. So again, it's not about the worry, but just making sure which accommodation under that umbrella would be more appropriate for your student.
And with that, Seth, you had put in a comment earlier, right around the same time as that question, that I think Keisha's response probably hit on. So you had said, it's interesting that College Board offers both text-to-speech and screen reader. I think Keisha gave a very good explanation as why. Yep, she got it. Awesome. So with that, similarly, Stephanie says, if the screen reader can read everything on the page, like describing the graphics, can that be confusing to the student? I think Deirdre's, I was just going to say, I think Deirdre's response earlier hit the nail on the head. What is the student used to using and what are they using it for? If the student's used to using a text-to-speech type of tool or none of these, yes, it would be confusing. But if it's something that they standardly use, then not. So I would defer to Deirdre, and I don't know if you want to chime in anything further on that, Deirdre.
James and Keisha, I think you did a great job articulating or delineating between text-to-speech and screen readers. So really, just to echo, if there are any questions about your students' access needs, please refer to the student's documented plan. We shouldn't be making decisions on the fly regarding what we think students are going to need and regarding reader supports. And if you have any questions about the functionality, certainly we recommend that you trial the text-to-speech on a practice test. If the text-to-speech does not meet the student's visual or print needs, then you can certainly trial the speech-to-text. But again, not speech-to-text, but screen reader. But the screen reader accommodation should be something that has already been established to provide the students instructional access. So again, if there are any questions, we have a number of resources posted to the Connecticut SAT School Day webpage, and then we will be providing some more in-depth information about this at the accommodation training on November 18th.
And don't mute your, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask Deirdre. I mean, I can speak to this, but real briefly because we have like some other things. But someone, Randall asked if we were going to input the accommodations from CT SEDS directly into College Board, and I want to say we're not this year. We're working on it for next year, for 27. But I think Randall had like 2 questions in there. Let's see. Just a clarifier, and extended time is the same as last year, but I'm not sure what that means. So you have to put everything into SSD. And I don't know if anyone else wants to comment. There was a few more questions that came in.
Randall, if the question about extended time is the functionality and the ability to end early the same as last year, the answer is yes. Nothing about that policy or procedure has changed. We've just added in Blue Book that it's called out to students a little bit more, but nothing about the process or policy or functionality has changed. If your question was different, just pop it in the chat. Keisha, Nadine had a question about using the new exchange option, and can that be used to toggle between screen reader and text to speech?
Yes, when you go into SSD Online for that process to make the change, that should be one of the options that you can do the exchange for.
And Laura asked, is that available now for the PSAT?
It is available right now. This actually launched within the past 2 weeks. And there was a communication sent out notifying schools about the new features. There was like a full newsletter giving updates about all of the different changes. I will also include a link here that will take you directly to the page about the most recent updates that were shared.
Awesome. And I think you answered Vita Rose's question about what is Chromevox, but Vita, if you have a follow-on question, just pop it in the chat. And unless I missed something, that brings us to the end of the list of questions. Doesn't have to be. Like I said, we'll move on to leveraging the SAT for instructional use if we hear crickets, but I want to take a pause for a moment just in case you're typing in a question. I don't want to cut us off too early. So we'll take a pause in case somebody's typing. Get your questions in. Meanwhile, I'm looking at my College Board. We got 3 College Board people and 3. Oh, Deirdre raised her hand. Go ahead, Deirdre.
Great, thanks, James. It's not a question, but certainly I wanted to follow up with Randall's question regarding CT SEDS. And so while we're not in a position to sync our accommodations data directly from CT SEDS to College Board, I want our colleagues to know that CT SEDS does include an updated accommodation menu for the SAT. Again, this is specific for grade 11 Connecticut SAT school day, but you'll find that there is a greater alignment between the naming conventions and what you'll be requesting in SSD.
Thank you, Deirdre. And you also bought some time for anybody who was typing a further question. And since nothing came in, why don't we go ahead on into how to leverage the SAT suite for instruction. Of course, if a question pops into your mind, either on that topic or anything we covered before, just pop into the chat. As you saw, there's lots of people on there to answer your question in the chat. So first off, before kicking over there, I just want to say, if you came here saying, I was hoping for some more PSAT information, we do have, this was an open Q&A and a high-level overview. So if you're looking for a soup to nuts, how do I order tests and register students for the PSAT? Or how do I use Test Day Toolkit for the PSAT? You can go to this URL, and again, Michelle's already posted the link, posted the deck, and register for either of those sessions. They've already happen. We promoted them earlier, but you can register now and they'll get the recording, right, Jenny?
Yeah, so those three they already happened, but you could, as long as you just go in there, register today, and then you'll automatically get the recording access. So definitely for the fall assessments, highly recommend watching those. Link for the coordinator. So what is the link for the coordinator portal? So you would go to your College Board account and then under your tools and services, but we can actually send out as follow-up all of the next steps on ordering and then getting to the coordinator portal. So we'll send that over to you. Tips for new users would be to make sure you have the correct access. We can definitely help you. So if you want to just respond back to the College Board SDP team, we can kind of walk you through, make sure you have the right access, point you in the direction of all of the resources. And just keep in mind, I know it's September 18th. I've been working with schools all day today. They're getting a little bit anxious, but you do have plenty of time for fall testing. Everything is so quick now with being digital. So take a breath. Testing doesn't start until October 1st. So you still have plenty of time to get everything done.
So when Jenny was saying the links and whatnot, she was specifically referring to for the PSAT testing.
For fall, yep.
For fall. So in terms of getting access into SSOR for telling us about who your coordinators are for the spring, don't worry. We haven't said that yet. Principals and district test scores will get those distributions in about a week for the pre-announcement, 2 weeks for the actual, here you go, here's the codes you need and what to do. But Jenny will, as she said, she'll get everything out to you that you need for the PSAT.
Yeah, just to reiterate, we do have slight differences between the Connecticut SAT school day and the other assessments that you do through College Board, like PSAT, which is something that's not required by the Connecticut Department of Education to administer, but we know that most schools in Connecticut do administer PSAT as well as AP. So those are things that we're happy to help you get additional help from our contacts at College Board. So you can always reach out to me or Deirdre. But those are tests that, since they're not required by Connecticut legislation, we don't really have an active role in them. So as James said, we're going to be requesting the latest contacts, who's going to serve as test coordinator, SSD, tech coordinator, and you're going to be putting that into SSOR. Instructions will come out to the existing list of contacts we have from last year. So I know it's not exactly perfect, but we'll follow up with you if we don't hear from your school.
And also referencing the visual that we have here, because Jenny said, oh, you can also access this as a one-click link from your College Board professional account dashboard. This is an image of that dashboard. And although I highlighted the training because of what I'm referencing here, you can see the SAT suite ordering and registration. That's for the PSAT. That's right there, what would look like in your dashboard. Universal to all of our assessments, though, was what someone was asking earlier about information on how to group students with different accommodations. And Keisha, type something as a direct response there, but Keisha, is there anything you wanted to say more broadly for everyone?
Again, just in terms of when you're grouping your students, one, you're utilizing as the SST coordinator, you are accessing your print dashboard feature that will allow you to see a full list via a CSV file where you can identify which students have the similar accommodations in order to group them, but then you're also relying on your test day toolkit access because that will group the students according to their accommodation. So one example that I mentioned earlier, I know someone was asking about screen reader and 50% students testing in the same room, and now that screen reader is decoupled. But your 50% students, if they're identified with 50%, and you have a room size that can accommodate a larger group of students, and you're adhering to the seating policy, if they're receiving 50%, if those students are identified with 50% in test day toolkit in the roster information, you can group those students together. It's just making sure that if you have kids who are also receiving the screen reader, they're utilizing their headphones because of the audio. So that is a general policy requirement. But when you're grouping your kids, they should be receiving the same amount of time, even when those extended time students are utilizing the extended time flex policy, where once they've met that standard time, as all students are required to meet the standard time first, but for your extended time kids, once they've met that amount, the standard time amount, they will be allowed, to move on following the safeguard buttons that are there to make sure they are not misclicking and moving on before they're fully prepared. So just thinking about it in that way is important. And something I mentioned in the chat earlier to someone was that also think about it now, where if you know you have extended time students who typically use more of their time than others, that may be just a helpful way with managing your room grouping, so that if myself and James, we typically use more of our extended time compared to Michelle and Deirdre, you may want to have us in James and I, a separate room versus Michelle and Deirdre, as an example. Could they all test in the same room? Yes, but think about seating them also, where maybe the ones who utilize more time, seat them more in the back compared to the ones that tend to, after the first 10 minutes of that additional time, may tend to move on. Because yes, you will have students getting up and moving around, and we certainly want to minimize the risk of distracting the other students who are still in the process of completing their test.
And Keisha, the only reason why I used all my extended time was because I fell asleep during the test.
James, you're always the problem, but it's okay. It's all right.
No, you do not. No, you would never fall asleep during the test. No.
Michelle has faith in you.
Michelle has faith in me. Thank you, Michelle. Well, as I said, any questions at all, just pop them into the chat. We'll keep going through some of these slides about leveraging the SAT. Some of the big takeaways from this one is SAT is one piece of the puzzle, both for getting a sense of students' aptitudes in different areas for career or college. It's not just about college, right? There's a lot of careers that require certain level math skills that maybe don't require that 4-year degree or any degree at all, but could be identified for a student who maybe didn't think themselves as eligible for those types of careers or eligible for college. So it's a piece of the puzzle to be considered with GPA, with other, if you're applying for college, observational pieces like teacher recommendations or whatnot. But it has been found both by universities that use these tools and by outside researchers that including standardized tests like the SAT does result in a more complete and perhaps therefore more fair assessment of a student and what they would achieve during their first couple of years of college. For some folks, literally, for a variety of reasons, they may look at their GPA or they may look at their personal experience in school and say, yeah, I'm not bound for I'm limited in X, Y, or Z way. And then they take one of our tests, and it may not be the SAT. It might be the PSAT 8-9. And they're like, wow, I did better on this than I thought I would. We're not saying that they got a perfect score. They're just saying I did better on this than I thought I would. Maybe I should try some different classes. Maybe I should try the same class as my friend over here. So something to keep in mind in that regard. For that reason, despite kind of the pandemic era move towards test optional, we are seeing SAT volume growing. So these are preliminary numbers for the class of 2025, but you do see growth year over year of students taking the SAT, and more students take the fall PSAT and MSQT than any of our tests. Also, performance improves with practice. We're not talking necessarily the test prepping on how to take a standardized test. We're talking about practice of feeling comfortable with the exam and better learning the material that is on it. So with that, practice also provides insight for instruction. So with that, you can use the link on here to see kind of new trends in test score use, even by universities as well as by districts and schools. And when you get down to high school districts, then it is looking at not just a test that somebody took the spring of their junior year or the fall of their senior year, but what were the tests that they were taking earlier, possibly as early as 8th grade, and leveraging that information in student assignment or seeing, hey, what are some strengths or challenges in our instructional program in different areas. Key to, those are some overview reports that we provided at that link, but you can look at your specific school or district data through the K-12 data portal. And I'm actually going to jump back to my screenshot all the way back here. Okay, so that data portal would be a link. This person that I took, it would be a link right here on their dashboard. Here, this person has the ability to manage access to it so they can grant access to other people in their district or school. If they granted it to themselves, they would see just where it says K-12 assessment reporting, and they would click on that to see the reports for their district or school. And then talking about leveraging that K-12 data portal, Jenny, I don't know if you want to chime in here and walk them through a little bit.
Sure. So I just want to make sure, James, we end at 2:00, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to be thoughtful of time. I know a few questions, though, did come in the chat. So I did want to make sure that we address them. Keisha, one question that came in, maximum of 20 students in an SSD room.
Are they asking, is that the max?
Yeah, is that the max?
Typically, if we're referring to a standard size type of classroom and you're adhering to the 3 feet distance seating policy, that would be appropriate. I always say, as a rule of thumb, that will change in terms of when you are placing those students in a larger room, for example, a library, a auditorium, a gymnasium, right? That will expand the max size, but it's also about adhering to the seating policy.
Perfect. Thank you. Another question that I see here for Test Day Toolkit, the option to permanently remove proctors' names. So we pull just in the Test Day Toolkit, again, please, anybody correct me if I'm wrong, but anybody that has a College Board account associated with that school or district, it doesn't give them any access unless you added them, but you can delete them. from a room, but not for the names that are pulled. But let me follow up on that because that's my understanding.
You're correct, Jenny. Right
okay, I
now,
just wanted to make sure.
they remain in the larger overall roster, but you can not give them a role for a particular test administration, or you can remove them from that role. But right now, not yet from the overall roster.
Okay, perfect. That was my understanding as well. And then just the last one was, what does it mean to exchange accommodations?
So I did respond to that
Oh,
one,
I'm sorry.
Jenny, but that's okay. But I will share it again with the audience. So when we say accommodation exchanges, this applies to your students who are currently identified in SSD Online with accommodations, but you want to make a change to that. So the common one that we've said a couple of times has been if the student was approved for screen reader, but they actually need text to speech, right? This is your student based on their IEP 504. They're identified with a reading disability and would use text to speech as that student is able to follow along because they, for the most part, they have there are some limitations with them being able to read on their own, but they're able to follow along with the text on the screen through the digital test. And that student is able to select the text that they want to have read aloud to them. Also using headphones. You've made that determination, but you realize that the student's currently approved for the screen reader where they do not need to have the entire test read aloud to them. So you're going into the system and you're following the steps in order to make the change. So that's an accommodation exchange. We only allow certain types of accommodations, and we do have that in the response that I provided, where the eligible changes that apply to this would be if you need to reduce the amount of time for the student, if you're changing the type of break. Your student is currently only identified with extra breaks, or maybe they are not identified with they're identified with the extra break, excuse me, but you now want to request for breaks as needed because this may be a student, as an example, with a physical medical condition, student is diabetic, drinks, they have permission for food and medication, they're drinking water frequently, excuse me, but they would need to use the restroom more frequently. Breaks as needed would be an example here where you're now going in to swap out extra breaks but apply for the breaks as needed accommodation for the student. So there are a small group of changes, but these are the ones that we are commonly seeing that come in quite often. And so through this self-serve process, it allows that update to happen much faster. As I said, in most cases, you will see that update when you make that change within 15 minutes. That change would now update a new decision letter, and that would also be visible on the SSD dashboard.
That actually does bring us to the top of the hour. So that's fine. This was, as I said, high level overview, the Q&A, and anything that we talked about in terms of leveraging for instruction, that was icing on the cake, but it is in the deck that Michelle posted. So it is not, this is the first time, it will not be the last time we have that conversation, particularly Jenny. So know that content is here. And as you can see, we have streamlined the dashboard. So lots of exciting stuff to check out. Michelle, do you want to round us out?
Yeah, real quick, there was a question, I think it was probably for Jenny, because it's about reporting. Someone asked if they're going to be able, for example, the strands or question types a student answered incorrectly. So remember that old report, the question and answer report?
Yes. So the one thing I did want to call that out. So when we moved to adaptive testing, we no longer have those individual question analysis because everybody has a different test. But we do have a number of resources and reports that will push you to getting the high level information for your students. So we'll send out some resources after this, as well as some of these, because even though we don't have the question analysis anymore, you are able to see generally like where your students are. And then we would push you to skills insight, which would let you show you the skills that you needed to focus on based on where your students are. So, oh, look at that, perfect timing. So you would see, okay, all of our students are in this this band, right? What are the skills that we can help work them on to get them to the next band? So it's a little bit different on what it used to look like, but still lots of resources and score information available. And perfect. Thank you.
Great. So the recording of this meeting will be posted to our Connecticut SAT School Day webpage. I had put the link to that earlier in the chat, but I will also email out the link to everybody once it's posted. It usually takes 1 or 2 days afterwards for it to be posted. Yeah, this was a lot of information. Please do take a look at the slides, which are now posted on that website that I mentioned. Here, I can put that link in there again before we go, so you can see where we have, oops, too many windows. There you go. There's our website. That's where we'll post. Oh, thanks, Dee. That's where we're going to post our recording, but currently the slides are posted there. So James did include a lot of useful information. I do urge you to take a look at the College Board's K-12 reporting portal. If you don't have access to that, check in with your principal. Usually they're the ones that have access management capabilities, but if you're at a dead end, you can reach out to one of us. So yeah, I want to thank everybody, my colleagues on the call. Great job, James, Jenny, Keisha, Dominique, Deirdre, me, for this
Great job,
webinar. And yeah, thanks again
Virtual
for your
high
time.
five.
And we will see you soon, I guess, in November. Yeah, I'll be in touch before that. Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.